SCBWI British Isles Annual Conference in Winchester, in the UK. I am Sarah Towell, and I just came off this amazing session with Kidlit TV founder Julie Gribble, who, among other things, taught me that I should not wear print on camera. Hello, tomorrow I'll go plain. And we are here with Roxy Monroe, who is going to be interviewing for our first round of interviewees, the co-chairs of this year's conference, AJ and Tracy, who have never co-chaired this conference before, and had never attended the conference before, and are currently missing one of the big events, which is the Hook. So they want to race back. So without further ado, I will hand the mic to Roxy so you can meet AJ and Tracy. There you go.
Hi, well, it's been great working with you guys remotely across the pond. We're thrilled to be here. And I can't believe how brave you are to take on this, both of you being kind of freshmen at this, right?
Yeah, I think we're slightly mad, actually, for doing it. So, yeah.
And I'm very tired.
And you haven't even had the party tonight.
I know.
Which
I'm looking forward to that, though, I think. It'll be amazing, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody in their costumes. So, yeah.
Well, the Brits are very into costumes, right?
Yes, yeah. I hear there's a lot of dressing up that occurs, and that people go really flamboyant and have very interesting costumes.
So let me ask you, I understand that this is the most well-attended in years, or maybe forever?
Yep, so we've got 217 attendees. So I think you were saying before, it's sort of, previously it's been just under 200. So we're absolutely astonished and delighted that our first conference is so far been really quite successful. So yes. We're really happy about that.
So now both of you are authors in your own right, correct?
Yes, we're both writers, yes.
And would you give me an idea, all of us an idea of what kind of work you do?
We're both young adults writers, actually. We write for young adults, so teens and upwards. And I think this year in particular, our keynote presentation from Catherine Johnson, who writes historical fiction for young adults, was a real draw. So I think we've got a lot of young adult writers here this year, which is a move from the past. We haven't always had that.
Yeah, and I think because we've got a whole range of authors and illustrators from both picture books through to middle grade and young adults, so we've got a whole range of people who've attended, which is really good.
Well, I tell you personally, going to a lot of conferences, this is like one of the most well-organized ones, and your timing, it really is, and the timing, really, we've all said, those of us both of us and Sarah, we're really impressed. Now, what about do you have a current book out, or are you working on a project?
At the moment, so I'm working on a project at the moment, which is Young Adult Dystopian Future. So.
Can you tell us anything?
It's set, as I said, in the future, and it's effectively a reverse migration story where people from the UK are having to move to Africa, where Africa is the first world and the UK is very much the third world. So.
Very interesting. Yeah. Now, have you been to Africa to do research, or are you going to go?
No, I've been doing a lot of research online and reading a lot of books and getting all my inspiration that way, so yes.
It sounds so creative. It really sounds like a darling idea. Now, what are you working on?
So I'm working on a young adult story as well. Mine is based actually on a student I used to teach many years ago who lost a parent in an accident, and she lost her voice, so she lost the ability to speak because of the trauma. So I've kind of written her story. She knows I'm doing it, but some of it's fiction, some of it's partly based on her. But it's the whole journey of how do you get your voice back. She lost her memory. She couldn't remember what had happened. So quite a sort of traumatic journey. But of course, there's love and kindness and a dog called Salty. So if you got a dog, you're fine. Yeah.
Now, do you have a publisher for that? Or an agent?
No, I thought that I'd be coming to this conference to kind of understand how it all works, and somehow I've ended up co-chairing it with Tracy. so yeah, I've got I need to finish it. I want to try and finish it by Christmas. That's the plan, and then I'll take it from there. I have got a mentor who's helping me edit and understand the process. So yeah, once it's ready, then I'll launch it into the world, hopefully.
Wow. That sounds so exciting. And now, what about you? Do you have a publisher, an agent, or an editor?
No, not at present. I mean, half the reason for doing the conference was you'll make contacts, you'll meet people, you'll be able to have more knowledge of the industry. You spend so much time during the conference, you don't have quite as much time to write, but it's really fun, isn't it? And it's really interesting, and sort of working with the whole team is really engaging.
Now, are you all members of a regional chapter?
Yes, I'm a member of the Southeast chapter.
And
I'm a member of the Southwest, which is incredibly active, so down towards Bristol and, the bit that sticks out at the bottom. So if you're in America, it's where the people left from to come and find you guys, so Plymouth. We're down that way. But yeah, so the regional chapters are really good, very active, and we have some great people running those as well, so yeah.
well, how many members total are in the BI? I mean, I think it'd be in the thousands.
It is in the thousands, but I don't know how many in total. But it's still growing, and I think children's authors and children's writing and picture books and so on are huge in this country. We've got some astonishingly good writers, so it is growing all the time.
Well, that's so exciting, and thank you all so much. And I'll just say personally, it's been great working with you.
Thank you very much.
We're so proud to have both of you here, and for to be doing something completely different. So thank you for coming. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. We'll be right back in about 1 second. We aren't leaving.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the
See you
hall.
at the party.
You betcha. Anytime. All right, so you might have noticed that we are surrounded by art. Roxy, I'd like to introduce you to Anne-Marie Perks. She is the SCBWIBI illustrator coordinator and has been for 18 years. So she can tell you all about what's going on here. It is the Illustrator Showcase. She organizes it. She's amazing. She is finally stepping down in her role as SCBWBI Illustrator Coordinator, and we haven't found a replacement yet, so don't hesitate to put up your hand. Contact Anne-Marie. You guys will have a great conversation. Both being illustrators, you'll have a lot to talk about. Take it away.
Thank you. So I remember, we were just saying we remembered each other because I was here in 2016, and we're like, I know you from somewhere. So you've been doing this how long?
18 years. Ooh.
No.
Sorry.
18 years.
18 years, yeah. When I first came over, I wanted to do something, because obviously by my accent, I'm not British. So I came over to, one of the ways to get to know the industry here and get to know people and make friends and all that was, of course, volunteer. And they needed an illustrator coordinator. And when we started out, we had 100 members. And now we have 1,000, and we started out with one event a year, which was an Illustrator Day, and now we have Illustrator Day and Writers Day came together to become the conference, the 2-day conference. We now have 4 illustration master classes. We have a picture book retreat. We have a biennial exhibition, which actually this is not the showcase. This is the illustration competition, which is called Beginning, Middle, End. And the illustrators send in ideas of the beginning of a narrative, what happens in the middle and what happens at the end, and that's what they're going to be judged on.
And I understand the judging has already happened.
No, it hasn't.
Oh.
It's happening at 5 o'clock.
Oh, that's right, because we're going to step out and give them their privacy when they do that.
Yeah.
So how do you get the word out through the SCBWI websites and that sort of thing? And how many entries do you have?
This year, I should know. Let's see, 13, I think there is, I'm going to say off the top of my head 20, because I lost count when they started coming in. I know I prepared 13 last night, and of course it's open for them to drop off in the morning. So 13 were only those that were posted to me. Yeah.
Wow. Now, you yourself are an illustrator, right?
I am.
Well, tell me a little bit, first of all, what's your latest book?
All right, well, at the moment, I'm taking time out because I really want to write and illustrate. So I'm focusing in on that. I'm also very interested in gallery work and seeing what might come of that. The last book I did that was published was actually called The Silky, and it was produced by Cluckett Press. And it's right up my alley. It was a folk tale. It's except it turned things around. Instead of the woman becoming the seal woman becoming human to fall in love with the fisherman, or the fisherman fall in love with her. It's a young girl called Wee Jeannie who falls in love with a seal man who comes ashore and becomes, of course, a beautiful man. So, but the books, 3 books before that, I did for Books Beyond Words, which are wordless books for people with learning disabilities and difficult readers. And it also dealt with issues of domestic violence.
Sounds very topical, actually. Now, tell me a little bit, as an artist, I'm very interested in your materials and techniques. What media do you use?
I'm predominantly a watercolor artist, although I do use graphite. Lately, I've really gotten into, particularly for older fiction, I've gotten into using graphite powder, blackwing pencils, of course, on a nice smooth paper, and then I might do spot color, or I do full watercolor illustrations, and then for some of my gallery-oriented work, I'm using oils.
Wow. So for your gallery work, just a quick question, what subject matter do you deal with?
Myths and fairy tales, of course. Except older. So I'm looking at strong women, mythic type themes.
Sounds very exciting. Well, thank you so much, and it looks like you've done a fabulous organizational job here.
Yep. Yeah, I've really loved it, but 18 years, I feel like it's been like a lifetime job. I feel like I should get a gold watch or something, but I don't know if I will.
There you go. How about a gold ink pen?
All right, yeah, I'll do that. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, you ready for the next one? Yes. Okay, keeping on the theme of illustrators, we now have my friend Bridget. Now, do you do Strevens Marzo or just Marzo?
Do you know what?
Come on, camera. Come on, camera.
I was known when I was International Illustrator Coordinator, the very first International Illustrator.
I was going to say that.
I was known. Well, that was kind of easier to pronounce than Strevens in England. Good heavens, it's Strevens. I came back to England having lived in France for 30 years. They knew what the name Strevens was.
Yes.
Come back to England and it's Stevens, So, sometimes names are not great.
So here you're using
So
Marzo.
I published my first book back here when I came back 5 years ago to England.
Yes.
I've done many books in the States and in France and in Australia. But for my first book here, I simplified my life to Bridget Marzo.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce my dear friend from our Paris years, one of the first people in SCBWI that I ever met when I first began to write after leaving the classroom for 25 years, and remains one of my best friends. We even shared a studio for a little while when I moved up from Paris. She moved up first. I followed her. Now we're both in London. Yeah. And enough about me. Let's turn it over to the illustrator in the room and hostess with the mostest to talk about all good things, Bridget.
And the thing is, we already know each other, don't we?
We do. I must have seen you at the New York conference maybe like 10 years ago, something like that. And it was a huge privilege and a job of work to be the International Illustrator Coordinator, but the wonderful gift was to have the chance to go to New York and to LA. So I was a mentor in LA, worked, in a portfolio review kind of area like this, although perhaps a little bit bigger. And the first time that there was mentorship organized, I was very much part of the committee then. But a bit like Anne-Marie, there's a point when you think you just want to hand over, to the next generation and focus on my own books and stuff. So I did that. But the story is, Urgi Diak, and she always says I don't pronounce her name well. She was the one that grabbed me at a party she organized in Paris in the late 90s. And she said, I need you. And I'd published written and illustrated my first 3 books, and she needed an illustrator to help her kind of found SCBWI in Europe. And we organized our very first conference at the beautiful Abbey de Royaumont with Arthur Levine from Scholastic, Stephen Roxburgh, English publishers, Ben Norland, who I was on a panel with this morning, we talked about the fact that he remembers me cold calling in the 90s. And so, you know, we're in time travel. So, you know, there I am on a panel with him over 25 years later. So there we are.
Well, that's so exciting, and you've had such an interesting career involving, you know, several continents and countries. Now, what was your very first book, and who published it?
My very first book, very significantly, was called Toto's Travels. Well, it was called Toto in Paris, and I had a young child called Thomas, and I thought, well, we love traveling, but I invented an adventure in 3 capitals in Europe, and they came out in England with what at that point was a new venture for Little Brown. So there was Little Brown UK, and it came out with NTC in the States because it had a few foreign words in each book. That's been out of print for years, but it was my entry into publishing. So that was in the 90s, done in old-fashioned line and watercolor. And then with that, I got into do you remember the lost world of CD-ROMs? So I answered an ad in the Herald Tribune. They were looking for a children's book illustrator who was bilingual. Well, hey, how many of those were in Paris that could speak English? So I worked in multimedia at that period. Interesting lost world, but kind of indirectly that led to SCBWI, teaching at Parsons Paris School of Design, and doing many more books of different kinds. Actually understanding the digital world quite early on. Benji was talking wonderfully about that earlier, and we were just kind of almost getting nostalgic about, well, I'm not sure we really are nostalgic about the early Photoshop 6 and all of that, but and my Quadra, the first time I could afford to buy a computer. So, and now I'm looking at the incredible work that is kind of out here, and some of it actually is, you can't actually tell what's digital and what's not now, you know, and the game between both, and it's so liberating. And I've just invested in Photoshop CC, and my gosh, the freedom, the brushes, the spattering, the charcoal, it's going to save me money with the real stuff, of which I've got far too much, you know, the real analog stuff. Yeah.
So you actually are kind of a first adopter in many ways.
Yeah, and actually I had a website before anyone seemed to have a website, and a company in Australia contacted me and sent me a beautiful text by Margaret Wilde. Then I went through Scooby, I went to New York, met Nancy Gault. She said, oh, I'm looking at your work, and it looks, I can think of an Australian publisher that's looking just for someone like you. I said, well, they actually already contacted me via my email, via my new website. So that was amazing. That was years and years ago.
One of the wonderful things about this internet, this world we have now.
And SCBWI, because, you know, I mean, Nancy Gault came through the connection that I already had with.
Wow.
I want to
So
pop
exciting.
in too, because she is a pioneer in many, many ways. And one of the things she's been pioneering, which really should be replicated all over the world of SCBWI, is pictures at play, a way to bring picture books and communities together.
Yeah.
Please talk about that for a few minutes before we introduce our next guest.
I think, you know, we first started it in a old house in Paris covered in vines. Remember that story? There literally was a place called the Mona Bismarck Foundation. And we were suddenly offered this space, beautiful rooms. I contacted Barbara McClintock in the States. We had John Shelley come from Japan at that point. We had French and English illustrators, David McKee of Elmer the Elephant, a whole bunch of people. And we also contacted schools. So we had a beautiful exhibition. We had talks for SCBWI with publishers that came from different parts of Europe, England and France mostly actually, and then we had events for kids, which was a great way for author illustrators to sell their books. So, you know, they'd have their work on show. Schools came, there were interactive games around the pictures. And I did the same thing last year in East London in a wonderful theatre called the Half Moon, which has a beautiful gallery space. So lots of us sold lots of books and did lots of wonderful events as a result. So for published illustrators, I think published author illustrators as well, it was a great chance to promote your work and do kids events, which is something that we haven't done too much of in SCBWI, so I'm very proud of that.
Our little focus groups.
Focus groups, absolutely, without whom none of us would be doing this. So there we are. Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much. And thank you so much. And I'll see you at the party. See you at the party tonight.
Thanks, Bridge. All right, let's shift over to
This
this
area. Good.
panel. And our next guest really needs very little introduction because you've already met him. It's our illustrator keynote speaker, Benji Davies. And come on this way. Again, keeping on our illustrator theme and having illustrator to illustrator conversation, meet Roxy Monroe.
Hi, Roxy.
Hi, it's an honor to meet you. I saw your talk this morning, and that little film was it's darling. And that was your first?
That was so that was the first film I made when I was at university. So that was my graduation film, and yeah, I kind of include it in the talk. It's not online anywhere, and I quite like to keep it so I can show it at things like this and sort of show people the stories behind the books. So.
Wow. So now you also, excuse me. She wants to move us over here. Okay. So you you went to art school.
So I studied animation at university, and I did that in Hull. It was Hull School of Art and Design. I studied at, and then when I came out of university, I was looking for. I think in my talk I was saying I was looking for work in animation, and it kind of evolved over several years of getting work in illustration and animation, and sort of running two simultaneous strands of my work. And then it wasn't until around kind of 2012 when the Storm Whale was Simon & Schuster wanted to publish the Storm Whale, and that's when I then kind of stepped away from animation and focused on my illustration work or author illustrator work essentially at that point.
But you know, I've just been reading a lot about visual thinkers, and you're essentially a storyteller through pictures, right?
Yeah. I think, because I came in from that animation side of things, so visual storytelling is obviously everything on the screen because that's what you're presenting to the audience. And so it took me quite a while to kind of work out, though, that picture books were very similar to films, and they're presented slightly differently because they obviously have words, but they're kind of the end result or the way you sort of communicate with people can be quite filmic. It depends how you do it, but the way I do it I think is quite filmic, even though it's within picture books. Yeah.
Right. It's a sequential kind of literary device when you do a book, and the same thing with films.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed in your talk that you still work in pencil a lot.
Yeah, so I work so my rough work tends to be in pencil, I use like a grey ink, which I find quite nice because it's a bit like the same kind of tone as pencil. But it's not too heavy. So it's not like black ink, so it's quite light. And then that's what I use for my storyboarding and I do my roughs like that. And then everything in the actual final artwork is digital, created in Photoshop. Apart from there might be a few elements that I bring in, some texture or something, but I use it quite sparingly in the final imagery.
So right now, would you say, when you say the word storyboard, I can immediately see, of course, anybody can visualize the fact that it's A, perfect for a picture book, and B, perfect for a film. So right now, if you had your druthers, because I heard you talking earlier about if you could really do exactly what you want, what would that be?
What would if I could do exactly what I wanted? I mean, I think I probably am getting to do exactly what I want. I think there was a time when I was doing more illustration for other authors' books, which I'm very proud of a lot of those books that I made, but it was only when I made this sort of transition into writing and illustrating my own material that I really kind of found my pace, and they're the books that have resonated with people the most out of all the books that I've worked on, and really given me a lot of opportunities actually to travel around, mainly in Europe at the moment, but to other countries with my books and with all the languages that they've been translated into. So I guess that's the sort of benchmark for seeing how successful they are. Really, is how far and wide they've gone.
And in fact, I mean, you have developed. That's to your great credit that you've been able to pull it off in a way, because it's hard to be an artist. It's hard to make a living. But it sounds like you've evolved, and now you've kind of crystallized.
Found a way to make it into a career, I suppose, of sorts, which is always a funny thing, I think, when you kind of. But coming at it from being creative, like that's what I always wanted to do, something either illustrating or animating, filmmaking. It's always the thing that I wanted to do, and so I would have found it impossible, I think, to take any other path. It just always felt like I had to do that, really.
A compulsion in a good way.
Exactly, yeah.
So, what do you have in the works right now?
So at the moment, I've written and illustrated 2 picture books this year. So in the past 12 months, I've actually written and illustrated 2 books. One is already out, and the other one comes out in March. So it's been a really intensive period. That's the shortest time between 2 books coming out. Normally, it's at least a year between books. So I've had 2 in two coming out within 6 months. So I'm kind of like just trying to take a bit of a breath, actually, at the moment, and wait to see what happens next. Sort of, I guess, something will trickle through, and
Something's percolating.
There's stuff there, definitely. It's like a sort of little, it's kind of building, and you kind of have to, kind of let it out every now and again.
Do you ever dream about a solution to a visual problem?
I wouldn't say dream. Maybe lay awake at night, kind of thinking for hours. Things, I always find that all that stuff kind of goes on in the background, and you kind of every now and again something comes through. Definitely, you do get those elements though in dreams and daydreams. I mean, daydreams, where things can go.
Your brain is solving it kind of almost unconsciously.
Exactly, yeah, I think so. I think there's a bit of that happens, and I think if you try and compress a project into too short a period of time and don't give yourself any freedom to actually decompress and walk away from it and come back and kind of like let it kind of do its thing, then really you don't ever find the solution to the story that you're working on.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So I really appreciate and enjoyed your talk, and I'll see you at the party tonight.
Very much. See you there. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you so much.
Cool, thank you.
All right, next up, in addition to another panel of artists, you want to go over here this time? Okay. We have next to talk to the sponsors of the conference. It's called the Golden Egg, and I will let them tell you all about what they do. So here, let me introduce to you Imogen and Adama from the Golden Egg, our proud sponsors.
Well, it's so exciting. So tell me, this is my first question. What's the golden egg?
Oh, well, now there's the question. So I'm Mother Goose, and this is Adama, one of our Golden Egg editors. But we encourage writers in the same way as Scooby does, really. But we are industry editors. We're working with authors, doing workshops and courses as well for debut writers who really want to get to publication. So whereas an MA is much more about finding your voice, the Golden Egg is absolutely about people who we think have got potential, so we select, and we help them get to publishable quality.
Wow, it sounds so creative.
Yes, so we've had a lot of success. We've had over 40 authors published now on a lot of prize lists and so on, and commercial success. So yeah, it's onwards and upwards.
So you deal with the creative. I sure have to find the good writers and good illustrators, and they submit a project to you, and then you all make a decision and help them craft it into almost like, would it be like a book packager?
No, what we do really is help people get to agents and publishers. So yes, we are working, as industry editors and Golden Egg editors, we are working closely with those people we select. But it's not like a book packager. We are funneling people who've got potential, nurturing them along the way. Really, in my idea when I started Golden Egg was to try and create a traditional publishing house editorial team. So looking after those writers, understanding the writer as well as the manuscript and what they really want, and helping them get there. And so many of them obviously want to attain an agent and publisher. So we actually have, I was editorial director with Chicken House, and we now have a first look deal with them. So Barry Cunningham, the great chicken himself, he will read everything that we recommend to him, which is an amazing opportunity for writers who, you know, who really want to be published. So you've got somebody who found J.K. Rowling and was his first publisher, actually reading your whole manuscript and giving his feedback. So he's now taken 6 of our writers, and obviously the other 40 of the other 34, a few more now actually, isn't it, are with other publishers, but because you know he's only got a small list. But yeah, we feel it's really important that our holistic way of doing things. So there's a community like Scooby, which is kind of why we're sponsoring today and this weekend, is because we've got a very similar ethos actually, and we're very great friends with a lot of the regional advisors. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like you guys have the fun part of the whole process, because you don't have to do the marketing or the production.
No.
You just get to play with the creative part, right?
Yes, and it's incredible, you know, seeing a writer blossom, you know, and gain confidence and go out in the world. So it's a great job.
Wow, very exciting. Well, thank you so much. This is such an impressive conference, and you know, and thank you so much for sponsoring it.
Pleasure.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
I heard you bought us our first drink.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And cake.
Yes, cake. Cake is even better.
Alcohol and cake. What's better?
Well, thank you so much.
Care. Bye. Thanks.
Hey, Roxy, I've got another keynote here for you. But before we introduce our next keynote, how about coming around here and taking a look at some of the other art in the Illustrator competition? We want to make sure we get everybody included on camera, right? Gordak was lonely. And look at these absolutely delightful pictures of, what's her name? Lady Greystone? I don't have my glasses on. Lady somebody, and the fire engine. There's artwork everywhere. All right, so our next keynote is somebody near and dear to me. If any of you know me, you know that I'm just bonkers for historical themes. Why don't we come over and use somebody else's artwork as a backdrop? Come on over here. Katherine Johnson, as we learned today in her keynote, got the lowest mark in history in school. Not just in her class, but in the whole school when she was 14, in the whole year when she was 14, but now has gone on to publish 25 years worth of historical fiction. How many books?
Well, about 20 books. They're not all historical. I think it's about 8 or 10, so about half of them are historical fiction.
The most recent one being The Curious Tale of Lady Caribou, which is just an amazing story. I absolutely love it. And the French Revolution stuff, which is also my period in history. Anyway, enough about me. Let's turn it over to Roxy to talk to Katherine Johnson, our author keynote for the conference this year.
It was so wonderful hearing your talk. It was so lively. I just really loved it. Oops. I just really loved it. And what I really like about the way you spoke was was the way you made history personal.
Well, I mean, you know, I think writing novels is personal because it takes so long. So, you know, you have to, and that's the only thing that makes a novel, because the stories exist, and what makes a good story is the way you tell it. It's the sort of, well, this is what I tell people I work with. It's the you-ness of you. So whoever that writer is, the way they interpret and polish and spin that story, that's what makes a good story.
It's filtered through like the personal, your human consciousness, but it's filtered, I think.
Yeah. I suppose so, yeah.
Individual sensibility.
Yeah. And you just want an adventure. You want to write a romp. When I sit down, I want it to be, like I said, it's very much the historical drama, family dramas that used to be on the telly in Britain in the 70s. And they were romps. They were kids romping, and that's what I like, really. So, you know.
So what are you working on now?
I'm actually not working on any. I'm working on a computer game. I'm working on a film script that I've been writing for ages, and I start a really lovely TV job after Christmas, which I can't talk about yet.
Ooh.
Yeah, the computer
First
game.
look.
I've never worked on a computer game before, and it's great fun. It's completely different from a book, because although there's narrative within the story, that's not down to me. It already exists. It's like a dream job. When I was a kid, the job I wanted was to be, you'd go into a chemist and they'd have little samples of hair dye and they'd have little names, or lipsticks. They'd all have names, or paints. And I'm doing things like, okay, well, this is the museum in this pretend place. Fill it with stuff. It has to be relevant with this, this, and this. What would you like in there? So it's like backstory.
It's your fantasy.
It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And it's a job. It's brilliant. So that's really exciting. It's very hard. I haven't got a novel on the go at the moment because I've had a lot to think about and deal with, and I'm hoping that I will be able to start a new one quite soon, but everything's been a bit for me. So
well, could you tell us your path? I mean, how did you pitch an idea for your very first book, or write it and then get it published?
No, it was a very long time ago, and what I did was I'd written I'd been commissioned to write a film script about something. I got halfway through it. I couldn't do it because it was the one about my parents. Was like, oh no. And I thought, maybe I can write something else. So I wrote an outline for a TV series, which was basically, it was a pony story. And I sent it to this TV company. And this doesn't happen. It was 6 paragraphs. And someone in that TV company knew someone who was setting up a publisher. This story, we'd love this story as a book. It's doesn't work for TV. I think it would work. And I said, are you mad? Have you seen how many words are in a book? There's no way I can write a book. No, look, we're going to send it to the publisher for you. So they did. And the publisher did, they sent me on courses. They sent me on the equivalent of an Arf on a Tin Newydd in Wales. They sent me away with a writer called Bernice Rubens, who's now dead, for a week. I went every day. My children were tiny, and I'd never been, and it was like every day, I want my children. And I said things to her like, I don't know what happens. And she goes, my dear, she was very English, my dear, none of us do. That's why we write it. And so they developed me. The editor at that small press developed me. And then I went on to be published by OUP, the Women's Press, Penguin Random House, Walker, Scholastic, Barrington Stoke. So and this is what should happen now, because people don't get that chance. You have to hit the ground running, and
and be a little lucky. A lot of people
you have
say.
to be lucky. You have to be lucky. Full stop. I mean that goes for life. But so that story is so unusual. My story is so unusual. I'm sure there's similarly unusual stories around, but I do feel very, very lucky. And it's also the people you meet. And in publishing, you meet the same people, and they pop up in different places. So, it's.
So the very first book, though, this one that kind of was, was that a YA?
Yeah, it was. And now I look at it now, it was quite autobiographical, which is a bit embarrassing. And
I'm going to have to read it.
No, it's that print. Ha, 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 ha. You probably can find it somewhere. But that publisher really, really did the job on me, and I cannot, because I had no idea of writing books. When I was at school, all my essays were too short and too slangy. I never thought I would be a writer. I mean, when I think back now, the things I was good at writing, and this is so long ago, it's before, phones and the internet, letters. I was good at writing funny letters, but I didn't, school put me off writing. School put me off everything. So I really have to thank those people, that editor who saw something and said, yes, off you go, here you go.
Was it wild to get your first hard copy?
Yes, it was absolutely brilliant. And I had a review in the Telegraph, and I thought I was going to, obviously I didn't. Yeah, exactly, no.
But it did. Look at you now.
Well, it's 20, still, I'm a mid-list author. What's amazing is that I'm still being published, because I don't have great sales. I know I don't have. That's why most of my income, I make my income from TV and from teaching. So, but I feel so lucky that I'm still doing what I'm doing, and that people occasionally want to publish my books. So, and it is stamina. It's partly stamina, but financially, I don't know how people do it these days. I think the publishing industry is shooting itself in the foot, because they will only be able to have a certain sort of people who can write books, people who are supported in one way or another, and that means they're losing out on a whole load of talent. And even if they're so fixated on debuts, and if that debut doesn't do anything, they don't think, okay, that person's third book's going to be much better than that first book. So nobody gets the chance, and it's constantly reinventing the wheel, and I think it's bad and wrong.
I think there's some issues in publishing. So, you're a member of SCBWI?
No, I'm not.
I was afraid to ask that.
I'm just very, very old,
So, what do you think of it? This is...
I've never been to this conference. I've heard of them, and actually, I do some work with Curtis Brown, and I do recommend Scooby to the writers I work with, because it's such a good... I know Candy, I've seen that it's a really good support network. When I started writing, we had local authority writing classes with creches, because it was in the dim, distant past. Yeah, so it's about finding your tribe and finding people who take your writing seriously, and I was lucky enough to do that outside of Scooby, because I lived in London and things were very easy. But I understand that for a lot of people it's such a good organisation, because it gives you that space to take your writing seriously.
And also, writers and artists work alone a lot, so I think they are excited to... They're like, these are our peeps.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I think it's a really good thing. It helps people find their tribe, and it gives people a chance to network, which is great.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, thank you so much, and I so enjoyed your talk. I thought it was just fabulous. So,
thank you.
See, are you coming to the party tonight?
I am indeed. I'll see you there. Thank you.
And thank you again to Catherine for turning history on, which is my big thing. Should we come over here in front of Romeo and Juliet? Can you squeeze that camera in here? Roxy, our next guest, is an instrumental member of an organization called CILIP, which stands for the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, which is quite a mouthful. But CILIP does amazing things all over the UK. It's an independent resource that represents and champions information professionals throughout the country. It develops skills and expertise and advocates for the role in communities and businesses of books and librarians and literacy educators, etc. You can ask him more about CILIP, but what we really invited him here to talk about are some awards that CILIP sponsors. One is the Carnegie, which is not the same as the Carnegie in the US, so you'll want to find out how that is the same and different. Also the Kate Greenaway, and this new, fairly new, project to promote and advocate for tactile books. So take it away. Sorry, I forgot his name. Jake.
Hi, Jake. Well, I listened to your talk today, and I thought it was fascinating, and I have several questions about that to ask you. But let me ask you a little bit first about your background. You're a librarian, and do you call them media specialists also?
I've not heard the term media specialist. It may be. There's all kinds of moves to try and reframe what a librarian is in the 21st century, really, so it may well be used. Yes, I'm a librarian. I don't actually work in a library anymore. I do lots of consultancy and training and that kind of work. So,
well, one thing I realize you want to chat a little bit about what I think we would call in America novelty books or movable books.
Yeah, I think this is this the tactile books. So yeah, one of the things that we're looking at through CILIP and sort of partnering with an organisation called Clear Vision, who are a charity working with visually impaired children and trying to make books accessible for them. And so there is a tactile book award called the Tiflo and Tactus Award, which has been running for 20 years. It will be its 20th anniversary next year. And it encourages people to make their own tactile books that then visually impaired children can enjoy and benefit from and have that experience of reading.
That sounds so exciting. So you want to grab one of them and real quick we'll look at it, how it works. I actually looked at this, and this, not to be crass, but it must be so expensive to produce.
They are. It would be very expensive to produce on a commercial level. So these are ones that have been sort of made as one-offs, really, and then are lent through the Clear Vision Library, which is a postal lending service. So there are all kinds of tactile elements that visually impaired.
This is great, people. This is a braille, an acetate braille.
Yes, so that means that all of the writing is in Braille, and there's also descriptions of what the images are. This comes off and you can feel it and sort of get a sense of it. And each page has sort of different elements that they can explore, discover, and have that same sense of wonder and enjoyment that children have when they read. So, yeah.
Wow, it's really fabulous. So, and now you are the head or help develop the committees for these fabulous awards, right?
So my role has been, over the past year, chairing the judging panel for the awards. So there are 12 judges from across the UK, representing different regions of the United Kingdom. And my role was to make sure that in discussing the books, they were discussing them fairly, equally, and that they were adhering to the criteria that we have for the two awards.
And are these people chosen each year? You get a new jury?
So it lasts for 2 years, and the idea of that is that it gives us sort of a staggered approach. So in each year there will be ideally 6 people who've already done it and 6 newcomers, so that you've got that continuity running through the process.
Sounds like a really cool way to do it. Yeah. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. Exactly. Kind of. Now the Kate Greenaway Award, is that for illustration?
The Kate Greenaway Award is for illustration, yes. So it's similar to the Caldecott over in the States, and it's looking at sort of outstanding artistic qualities and visually stimulating and satisfying illustrations across the whole work.
I remember in your talk, which I was interested in, we were talking a little bit about picture books, and you had mentioned that in the UK, well, you can talk to me a little bit about the differences between Australia and the US, you felt, and the UK and the direction it's going.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we have with visual literacy over here is that it has tended to be seen as being very much a rung towards learning to read. And then once you've learnt to read, actually you don't need illustration anymore.
Bad idea.
Very bad idea, and you miss out on so much, I think, with that. Over in Australia and in the States, there's much more sort of sophisticated picture books, and there's more of an established market for that. We don't have that in quite the same way, although I think it's beginning to come in, and we're beginning to see more visually illustrated sort of novels, and yeah, so I think times are changing in hopefully exciting ways.
Oh yeah, because you know, so many children are visual learners.
Children are visual learners. I think one of the things with the literary arts is actually they lack a sense of immediacy quite often. You have to read the story to be able to tell what's in it. And illustration really gives that sense of immediacy and can give that hook that draws people in.
Very exciting. So thank you so much for, I enjoyed your panel this morning, and thank you so much for visiting us. You've given us food for thought.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Bye. Say bye. Bye. See you at the party tonight, right?
Jake, will you be at the party tonight?
I will, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, so the illustrator competition is now about to be judged. So we're going to move into the lobby and talk to some of the Carnegie nominees who happen to be delegates of the conference. Follow me. Pick up a few pieces of art along the way. Isn't that one lovely? Wow. All right. All yours, Emery. Let me know when you're done. We're going into the lobby now. Is the hook over? Not quite. Okay. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so we have 3 Carnegie nominees for the 2019 award. And they've got their books. And now you know a bit about the awards. So we're going to let each of them in turn talk to Roxy about their books. And I know that there's an interesting story behind Matt's book. You'll want to find out about the brutal battle to get it acquired.
Wow, I don't know whether to start with you or finish. Maybe we'll get the more, we'll go in order here. So what is your name and what is the title of your book?
My name is LJ McWhirter, but everyone calls me Liz. I am Liz McWhirter. My dad used to call me LJ, which is why I called myself that as a pen name. And my book is called Black Snow Falling, and it's really a Tudor fantasy. And so it's kind of Wolf Hall meets His Dark Materials. And it's set in the 16th century, so in the time of Shakespeare and Elizabeth I, the time of the late Renaissance, and the time of incredible things happening with science and things like this being seen as complete heresy as well. So it's a time of oppression, and my character Ruth is completely caught up in what's happening, and she's subjected to terrible, monstrous sexism, which is so awful. It doesn't just break her heart, because it's going to break up her secret love, her relationship with a secret love. It actually breaks apart time, where beyond she encounters these evil, sinister creatures stealing people's hopes and dreams. And so it just goes into, it's a feminist thriller. It's magical realism, so it's grounded in reality, but it's also a bit of science fiction thrown in for good measure with time travel.
Now does this all takes place within the British Isles?
Yes, actually. Oh, no, it doesn't. There is one scene in another country, but I'm not going to say what it is, but it just fleetingly touches on there.
Well, my question is, did you have to do a lot of research? Did you travel up throughout the country specifically for this book?
I grew up in Cheshire, where there were lots and lots of Tudor halls, which are really old Elizabethan halls, these beautiful black and white buildings, hence, I think, part of the treatment of the colour of the book. And so that had kind of seeped into my memory, as it might seeped into my consciousness as a child. So I think the whole Tudor atmosphere just kind of oozed out from that. But I did do a huge amount of historical research. And the most surprising thing I found out was that back then it was believed that if you read as a young woman, it would make you infertile.
Oh, no.
Yes. So my character Ruth is bright, she's privileged, but she has no rights, and she's completely vulnerable. She's treated as property, and she's told she has to stop breeding, which is her lifeline to the outside world. So
that wouldn't work for this group of us here. Well, thank you so much. And now, let's see. So, would you please say your name and the title of your book and maybe a little synopsis?
So, my name's Kath Howe. The title of my book is Ella on the Outside. And a synopsis would be, Ella is a new girl in a school. She starts partway through a school year. She's round about 10, 11 years old. She has no friends. She's very anxious starting school. She's trying to find the right people. She's very concerned to find the right friend, and she's left a lot of people behind. She's left in a hurry. We don't know why Ella is changing schools, but we know that there's a family secret that she's been told not to share in this new place. So she's starting this new school, and she makes a terrible mistake. She chooses the worst bunch of girls to be friends with, and things spiral very much out of Ella's control, and she becomes very unhappy and manipulated by somebody else in her class. So it's really a story about the power and the pressure on somebody trying to work out where their friendship should be. It's about the power of friendship, but it's also about a kind of relationship thing that can start between girls that can become very intense, particularly in those years, I think. It's based on my own experience partly. I changed schools a couple of times. Between about 5 years old and 12 years old, I moved schools twice. At one point, I moved from Glasgow in Scotland down to Cambridge in England, and I was very badly teased as a child. I had very severe childhood eczema, and I've given Ella eczema in the story. So I think it's a narrative that pulls the reader through, wondering about the secret, wondering if Ella will be okay. And there are letters that she writes at the beginning of every chapter to her dad. We don't know where Dad is. And the letters are something that becomes a kind of mystery that will be solved, and that the child reader is kind of wondering about these letters, which are full of this missing for her dad. So that's the story.
So the letters are kind of a device to move the narrative.
They're a completely separate story in a way, but you realise that the stories are going to collide. I'm a teacher myself. I work a lot in schools. I work with children in all age groups, and I work with children to build their self-esteem. I teach a lot of drama, so I think all that has fed into Ella on the Outside. It's got a lot of dialogue, fast dialogue between children. A lot of the children reading it are saying that they maybe not somebody who's very confident as a reader, so they're finding that it's not a difficult book for them to pick up and read. It's something they can adjust and read fast. Dyslexic children too. People are using it for counselling. So I'm very excited by the ways it's being used in schools already, and the people who are contacting me about it. I'm very proud and pleased about this. So
That's so exciting. It sounds fascinating. And now we're going to hear another Matt, right?
Matt Killeen, yes.
Matt. So you're going to tell us your story, which I got the hint of is kind of going to be interesting.
Yes. I mean, this is actually a notebook because I didn't have a copy of my book with me, but the printers had a sale and they talked fancy and I got confused. It's got the US cover on the other side. Yes, this is Orphan Monster Spy, which is a YA historical fiction which is set at the beginning of the Second World War. Sarah, who's a German Jewish girl, she is orphaned in an escape attempt, runs into a British agent who she saves, and then she goes to work for him as undercover in a school for the daughters of elite Nazis, where she has to befriend the daughter of a nuclear scientist. And, suitably horrific things happen.
So, I mean, it's very interesting that all three of you have done different time periods. So, what's the story here now? The book has two covers?
Oh, this is the US cover, and this is the UK cover. And I had a chance to do that. So
this is a mock-up.
Yes, I'm afraid so. This is my note. This is my note.
There are no words in it. It really is fanciful.
Yes.
So, who's your publisher?
It's Usborne in the UK, who have been very supportive. They read it and they were like, oh, we have to have this. And Peter Usborne himself, who was married to a German at the end of the Second World War, said he thought it hit all the sort of emotional authenticity that he was looking for. So he was very, very interested.
Did you have how was it to write in the voice of a girl?
Interesting one. I sort of all my life I've kind of sort of railed a little bit against sort of the patriarchy and notions of masculinity. There was not a lot there for me in those notions back in the 1970s. And so I've sort of always identified slightly more with a female voice. I had some, strong female figures in my life, sister figures, who kind of set me on the right path, and a bit of sheer height here, a bit of L7 there, and,
I always consider it cool and kind of a compliment to women when men write about in the mind of a girl.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I would say, I think men... reading is essentially about empathy. It would be good if sort of more men thought in that way and thought a little bit outside of themselves.
Yeah, I think so too. And this is a YA, right?
It is, yes.
Who's your publisher in the U.S.?
Viking.
Oh, cool.
Right.
There were quite a lot of publishers that wanted this book, right?
Was there a bidding war? Is that the story?
I believe so. I believe that was the PR story. I think when I started to write this, I kind of saw, sort of nascent fascism in the way that some countries were acting. By the time it was completed, we had, sort of fascists in the White House. And
We're talking timely.
yes, and so I think it just sort of it arrived at the right moment. I think there's a thirst for sort of that story, and I think it's vitally important that it's told, really.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. And is it published already?
Yes, it came out in March.
In March? Yes. Oh, wow. We're going to have to look for it in the U.S. Well, that's just fabulous. It was just wonderful meeting you three, and I love the idea that they're all about girls, and they're all at different time periods. So it's very, very cool. Congratulations, and see you at the party tonight, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, I have failed, because I was so interested in their stories, to queue up the next guest. So I would suggest maybe we look at some of the 10-liners in the 10-word pitch. There's lots of different events here at the SCBWI conference. There's something called the 10-word pitch competition. There's a raffle for all kinds of different editorials or portfolio reviews, and that's on the other wall. There's a bookseller here selling all the books of all delegates who are published. One of the things that's so exciting about the SCBWI British Isles Conference is that it does cater to published authors as well in a strand called Pulse. It caters to self-published authors in a strand called Spark. I co-chair the Pulse Spark strand with Maureen O'Hara, who is also here somewhere. And right now, we're experiencing, right there in the auditorium, a competition called The Hook, which I actually, we'll go in just a sec, but I don't want to talk while we're in there. I was actually a Hook participant last year, and it's called the Shark's Tank or Dragon's Den of non-agented fiction writers. So you get up, 5 people are selected to get up and pitch their story to 5 agents. The agents then have to choose one winner who then gets to choose an agent. So why don't we go in and peek in, and I'll find our next interviewee.
Incredible quality. So that was the ending of The Hook, folks, where 5 people get to pitch their ideas to very famous agents, and one of them gets a contract. So it's very exciting. So that was The Hook, which is a big deal, and any author who gets to participate in it is thrilled. 5 agents pick. Oh, and now we're coming up on our next interviewee.
All right, next up, right here in front of the bookseller, P.G. Wells Limited from Winchester, with all the keynotes books and all the books of delegates. Every delegate gets the opportunity to have at least 3 titles for sale at the conference, right, guys? And who am I asking? I'm asking our 2 co-RAs for SCBWI British Isles. We're going to hear from both of them, Catherine Emmons and Natasha Bebo. I'm going to start with Catherine and ask Roxy to ask you all about what is the role of RA, and in particular, what is the role of RA in the British Isles, and how you guys split the effort, how long you've been doing it, and of course, about her own book, which debuted in 2016, went on to win a Crystal Kite, went on to get a Carnegie nomination,
Yes.
and there was one other.
It won the Edinburgh International Book Festival
Exactly.
First Book Award.
Exactly.
The first YA book ever to do so.
First YA ever! So this is Catherine Evans, and then we'll pass the mic to Natasha Bebo, who has also won an incredible award. The MBE, and I will leave you hanging on that hook. What is the MBE? Here you go.
Thanks. So first, I have a very important question.
Yes.
What is all this?
Okay, so these badges, this is where I started my volunteering career for SCBWI. So it starts with badges, and it ends with being co-RA and helping to run everything that happens here in the British Isles. And I have a very specific job. My job is finance, so I look after all the money, and I quite often feel like I'm the person that always has to say no. But more and more I'm able to say yes as we grow and grow and grow, and we have lots of volunteers that support the work we do here.
Well, you all have been doing a stunning job. I mean, we go to conferences quite a bit, and this is like one of the best, most well-organized ones we've ever been to. But anyhow, let's talk about your book. So tell me the title and the publisher.
So my debut was called More of Me, and it was published by Usborne in the UK and Abrams in the USA. And I write contemporary fiction with a sci-fi twist. But I have a new book coming out next year called Beauty Sleep, also by Usborne. And I don't have a copy. She's just pushing me. I'm being pushed. Which is about a girl who is put into cryostasis. She thinks she's dying, and it's the only way that she will have a chance to live again. And she wakes up 40 years later, and it's about how a girl from a pre-tech world, the 1980s, manages in our future now, 10 years ahead of now, when she's got to deal with social media and all of those kind of new pressures that they throw up for a teenager.
But you have to figure out what's going to be here in 10 years, right?
I do, and it's so much fun making stuff up, but that's what we do, right? So that's the great part of my job. Also, I'm a bit lazy, so you don't have to do so much research if it's 10 years in the future, because nobody can tell you you're wrong. Not until 10 years in the future, but
Think of Jules Verne. I mean, didn't he invent submarines and all that sort of thing that came into play?
Well, he did, and not just him. Michelangelo had some great visions. Helicopters. He was designing amazing things years and years before they were even possible. So that's what I mean. Yeah, Da Vinci. Yeah.
Leave it to the.
I'm really overexcited. Can I just say about The Hook? I'm just so excited. Did you guys film The Hook?
No.
It was incredible that the contestants all pitching their books. They were just brilliant. I was so proud of them all. They were wonderful. They were really wonderful.
That's so exciting. So anyway, congratulations on doing a stunning job. Now I'm going to talk to your Natasha, your co-host. And before we get to your books, I know what it's the MBE, right? I know, that's pretty fancy. Tell us about it.
It is. It's an award, a national award. It stands for the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, and it's an award that is given by the Queen, and it's in recognition of my services to children's book writers and illustrators in my role at 20 years as RA, building up the British Isles region from maybe 10, 20, 30 members to over 1,000 members in this huge big conference that you're at today. So it's really exciting.
It's so exciting to find somebody who really does something really getting an award. I mean, a lot of people do, but still it sounds like it's a kind of a very original kind of niche for you to get this award, in.
Yeah, the award came as a surprise. I had no idea I'd been nominated by fellow volunteers. And it's a huge honor. And in the UK, it's given to people who volunteer and give back to the community in lots of different capacities.
Now, there's a ceremony with the Queen, right?
There is.
Have you figured out what you're going to wear?
I haven't got a date for my investiture, which is what they call when you get your medal from the Queen, but I'm sure there'll be really fancy guidelines about hats and curtsies and what you can and cannot do when you go to the palace. So that's super exciting, something to look forward to.
So, and gosh, you'll have fun with the children telling this story. Now, tell me about your latest book.
So I've got a new book coming out. It comes out in March next year. It's called The Crayon Man: The True Story of the Invention of the Crayola Crayon. It's illustrated by Stephen Salerno, and it talks about how the Crayola crayons were invented, about Edwin Binney, who was the man who was passionate about color, who had a knack for listening and making stuff that people needed. And it's just a great story about color and about one of America's most iconic toys, the Crayola crayons.
You know why I'm particularly fond of that? No, I mean, I'm an artist, but I'm fond of it because it's nonfiction. And nonfiction's very hot now.
It is. It's a great genre. As Kathy was saying, it's so great when you can be inspired by real life. The stories in real life are sometimes stranger than fiction. And I just loved researching everything about Binney and his journey to creating these amazing crayons that are just so commonplace now, right? But once upon a time, you could only draw with chalk and slate, and it was all very monocolor.
Well, very exciting, and congratulations so much on this fabulous honor.
What are you gonna wear?
That's what I asked her.
She did ask me what I was going to wear.
She was vague about it.
Definitely has to be a nice hat to meet royalty.
Now, do they put something around your neck, or do they?
Do
they have a sword and
you get to meet a member of the royal family, and you get a medal that is pinned on your lapel. That's right.
We'll make sure to post a picture of you in it on Kidlit TV's Facebook page.
And I have a question. Now that you're getting to be honored by the Queen, can a girl be a knight?
Can a girl be a knight? Yes.
Cool. When did that happen?
I'm not sure what the date was when they changed it, but yes, you can be.
I actually
You become a dame.
I wasn't thinking actually of that kind of a knight now that I think about it. A modern knight. I was thinking about in the old days where knights were running around slaying dragons.
Well, yeah, Kathy's fencing.
She's a competitive sword fighter.
Yeah, I do.
And
I really
a belly
do.
dancer.
Yeah, not at the same time.
And a farmer.
Yeah, I do. I've got my first international competition at the end of May next year, and I'm already so nervous. But it's going to be, really cool.
It's so exciting. I'll tell you, these Brits have such fascinating careers.
Can we post a picture of you on Kidlit TV with your
Yeah.
On guard.
Go on my website. There's a little clip of me fencing on the homepage.
Okay. Very cool.
So it's www.catherineevans.inc. I-N-K.
And it's Catherine with a Y. And Natasha's company is Blue Elephant.
I run a literary consultancy. It's Blue Elephant Story Shaping. So I edit everything up to from picture books up to middle grade, and I offer editorial advice to help people get their manuscripts up to scratch pre-submission. And I really love story shaping.
And now you know what I think we should do? There is a lot of anticipation in the lobby there because the judges, who are a panel of how many agents? Four excellent agents. They are deliberating on who will win the hook. So I think we should wander on in there so we can get the announcement and then talk to the participants, coordinator and winner, before we shut down, and maybe on the way we can ad hoc, just speak to a couple of delegates along the way. Should we do that? Okay, let's go. Let's go. Thanks, guys. Hello, delegates. Are you having a good conference?
Yeah, amazing conference.
Well, give me one takeaway. What's like one aha moment?
One-to-ones, definitely.
Oh, you had a good one-to-one?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Positive feedback.
How about you?
I had a good one-to-one as well. I've pitched my sloth idea, which seemed to be reasonably successful, so I'm excited for that.
Are you a hook participant?
Oh, no, I'm definitely not brave enough to do the hook. The hook participants were brilliant, and it was really exciting to watch, and they got amazing feedback, but I would not do that.
Maybe another year. Yeah. How about you?
I really like the plotting section. It gave me some new ideas on just different ways to approach it and how to fix problems.
So you're all authors in the making? Yes. All right. Thank you for talking to us today. And should we have a peek in? Should we see? Have they announced yet? They have? Who won? Where are they? Where are they? They're coming next. All right. They're coming next. Our hook people are coming next. They're down there. Let's go on in. There they are. Where are the participants? Sarah, how did it go? An exclusive. We'll take who's ever here. Okay. Who's the winner? Well, somebody go find Catherine, please. All right. So this is the leftovers of the hook. As a hook participant last year, I can tell you it's very, very nerve-wracking. I spent all of Saturday last year not attending because I was so nervous about having to stand up and pitch. And now we have 2 pitchers and the coordinator. Let's start with you, Zoe. Tell us about the hook.
So it's basically a Dragon's Den style competition. Oh, you can tell I've just been doing this for an hour and a half, can't you? And our pitchers have literally 5 minutes to pitch themselves and their story, and they can't go over, because if they go over, this is the threat. We didn't actually get to use it because we I'm glad we threatened them so much that they were scared. We absolutely scared them, so therefore they all kept within time, so we didn't actually get to use it. And so we had 6 contestants. It was so hard for our internal panel to choose who they were, and they each came up and pitched their story, and we have 2 of our contestants here with us now.
So, can we get a brief synopsis of your pitch? This is George and this is Sarah.
Hi, I'm George, and my story is called The Time Toilet, and it is a latrine punk novel. Think The Time Machine mixed with Match of the Day, mixed with horrible histories, creating a story that will yank the chain of any 8 to 10-year-old.
So is it middle grade?
Yeah, I would say it's low and middle grade, 8 to 10. It's a lot of it is the ultimate in toilet humour story.
That works. And what about you?
My story is middle grade, and it's based on a boy called Danny who's covered in 1 million freckles. And what he doesn't realise is that his freckles match the star constellations above. It's not until he meets his friend Luna, who is an amateur astronomer, and she introduces him to the sky at night.
And what's your name again?
Sarah Broadley.
And you're George?
I'm George Kirk, yeah.
Very exciting. And your is for what level?
Middle grade. Yeah.
Wow. So were you guys, did you actually practice your pitch in front of the mirror and in front of people before you did it?
We were both talking earlier about how we've been walking around muttering under our breaths. Yeah. We've been walking around town.
Winchester, we're passing people who are looking at us and they're talking to themselves, so yeah.
Well, in New York, we're used to that because everyone has these ear things on.
What did it feel like, guys? What did it feel like?
I was okay actually. I do a lot of public speaking, but I kind of Molly went like that with her head, and I thought I'd bored her, so that kind of put me on my back track a little bit. But I did the best I could, and I thought it was great. And I love my stories, and that's what it's all about. So
you had faith in your story. So did you all have you dreamt about it, or has it entered your unconscious? I'm not the story, we know that, but I mean this event.
Certainly for the last 2 weeks, it's been sort of like my main focus. I've been writing it, practicing it, honing it, timing it again, doing it for the family, doing it for the husband, doing it for the kids, doing it for the cat. I'm quite glad to just put it to bed for a little while now and have some sleep.
So you guys are going to be happy at the party tonight, right? The hard part's over now.
We're already said we're off for our drink now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have it on good authority that tonight's winner of the hook, whose name is Kathy, Catherine, is meeting with her new agent. And who did she choose? She chose Molly
Kerhon. Yeah.
Molly Kerhon from Bright Agency, right? Bent Agency. So that's pretty exciting. So I think we're going to wrap it up, but I would like to ask George a special favor before we wrap it up, because she's extremely talented on the ukulele.
What do you want me to do?
I don't know. How about a rejection song?
Do the rejection song. Hang on a minute.
Or maybe the song that you did for the... George, because we were really strict on the 5 minutes, George had a 30-second bit to do, actually as part of her pitch, but sadly she ran out of time. And I must admit, I did break the rules just slightly because I couldn't...
Since we missed it, for real?
Okay, right then. Are you ready? Yeah. So remember, this is a song about a toilet. A time-travelling toilet, in fact. Oh dear, what can the matter be? Nana Hannah's lost down the lavatory. It will be a footballing travesty if Scott can't find her again. She went in the toilet and was just there sitting, doing her business while doing her knitting. She pressed the wrong flusher and soon was transmitting through time and no one knows quite when. And that's it for today. Long day.
It's been a long day for everybody, and I think that's going to be a wrap. We'll see you in 2 hours, an hour and a half, more or less, at the fancy dress party.
I gotta go and put my costume on.
You gotta go and I gotta go put mine on, and you gotta go put your on. We'll see you in a couple hours. Ciao for now.